Looks like players have their opening hands. We're just waiting for the go-ahead, and they have it. And you have David Duran at 4-1. Oscar Christensen technically undefeated at 4-0-1. Technically undefeated is not the best kind of undefeated.
No, I mean, you're not going to complain about it.
No.
Being undefeated's pretty nice, but you would like to just have all of your match points or all of your matches fall into the first part of your win-loss record.
We're going to see Pluto Delta finding
that was a
Basic Swamp
classy
and
fan out.
Thoughtseize. Graceful fan out, as you said. And we're going to take a look at the 6-card hand for David Duran. It is Preordain, Corey Steelcutter, Wooded Foothills, Mishra's Bauble, Lava Dart, and Dragon's Rage Channeler.
This is a really interesting type of opening hand. I suspect we're going to see Thoughtseize go after the Corey Steelcutter, as it is the card here that is the hardest for this Esper Blink deck that Christensen has to just power through. But I think the sequencing here on Duran's side and really what they have to choose to do is the interesting thing. And I would love to get your thoughts on this because I know you play a lot of the Prowess deck.
So I'm strongly in agreement about you about that Corey Steelcutter being the standout card on power level. What I think Christensen is thinking about is the fact that this is a one-land hand. And he correctly comes to the conclusion to take the Steelcutter. It makes some sense, you know, the DRC, the Preordain, they're going to find that land, but they could brick. But I strongly agree with both you and with Christensen that the Steelcutter is just the take.
Right, this is a spot where if you're in Christensen's seats, you know that you're going to need to play 5-6 turns of Magic to win a game most of the time. It's possible we see the Impended Overlord, Indophilia, the really fast draw. Most of the time, that is not the story that Christensen's trying to tell. So in that world, you have to think, okay, I should be playing for the games where my opponent has a functional draw and not hope that they brick on a land for, 9 cards or something like that.
Going to see a fetch and a shock for Duran for Steam Vents to cast that Dragon's Rage Channeler, then playing the Mishra's Bauble, getting that Surveil trigger off the DRC.
Really interesting. Usually, Mishra's Bauble is the only artifact in Graveyard for something like Delirium, but right now, you have to think that Duran is trying to pay some amount of respect to a card like Orcish Bowmasters.
Yeah. Black mana is often representative of that.
This is a closed deck event, so we know there are no copies of Bowmasters, but Swamp Thoughtseize, it's got to be one of the first cards you think about.
If you're going to register Dragon's Rage Channeler, and the reason that I am not big on the card in my Prowess decks, Bowmaster is part of the reason, so yeah. But yeah, there's the four Overlord of the Baelmerk. We're seeing a lot more of that kind of stuff in Christensen's deck. Trying to go longer. Cards like Psychic Frog are also very good at answering Dragon's Rage Channeler, just in a more roundabout way.
Ooh, the clean basic from Christensen.
Yeah, Basic Plains is land number 2, and here's an Oracle of Bones. That can do some work at checking Delirium.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty nice get here. Just going after that Wooded Foothills in Duran's graveyard, knocking Duran back to 2 on the Delirium count.
Right, back Duran's way. Here is that Preordain. Here's a Surveil trigger off the Channeler. Expressive Iteration going to the bin.
All right, couple sorceries, an instant, and a couple artifacts in yard now. Duran really wants to find a land.
I think once again, you're having Duran kind of trying to figure out what's going on the other side of the table. With that Oracle of Bones, you might think this is an Atraxa deck.
Sure.
At which point you would not have time for Expressive Iteration, but this could be a matchup where it's just your best card.
Right, it's really interesting. Right? I think it's going to come down to if Duran has the land drop or not. Oh, you smell that?
Well, we don't have Delirium when we're attacking our 1/1 into a 2/2. So it sure smells like a mutagenic growth.
Oh, I wish I knew if Duran did not have it.
I'm with you. I think it's just strictly correct for Christensen to not block, but it would have been a heck of a thing.
It's so fun because Duran is also supposed to attack every time.
Right.
What do you do, block?
At some point, he won't even be able to choose, but for now, I think Yeah, I agree with you. It should just be coming in.
As you get deeper into events like this, assuming you have a strong record, you can assume your opponents are well informed, know what's up, etc. You can play around a bit of, oh no, I think they know that my deck plays mutagenic growth, which means they have to respect it. They don't want to give their card up for nothing.
Something we're seeing here from Christensen. Uses the Marsh Flats to find a basic plan. It's kind of showing that the blue splash on the deck is pretty light. And here is Ketramos. That's a combo with the Oracle.
In a lot of ways, I also think this is Christensen just really valuing having a high life total in the matchup where, yes, casting Cyclic Frog is good, but if you don't even have the card yet, it's hard to justify paying 2 life.
Right. Oracle of Bones, it wasn't blocking, so it should attack. Love that from Christensen. We'll see if Duran can ever find that second land.
Yeah, is there a case for the upkeep Lava Dart?
It's ugly.
Look, when you draw the second Steam Vents, it's especially ugly.
Right, right. Ooh, second Dragon's Rage Channeler, okay. That can make it easier to try to establish and maintain Delirium, even against some light graveyard hate, as Preordain is going to give 2 Surveil 1 triggers. The ideal hit, Lava Dart, going to the graveyard.
Judgment Lava Dart, no less.
The ideal Lava Dart.
The ideal Lava Dart.
Second card is kept on top as now Duran scries 2. Can be pretty confident that both are not going to the bottom.
Dragon's Rage Channeler is just such a fun card.
Yes. Looks like Duran's thinking about keeping both of them, and he does. We now have Sorcery Instant Artifact in the graveyard. The Lava Dart could put a land there at any time. Attack for 1, Christensen to 13 as we go back his way.
This is so interesting where having a target for Emperor of Bones in this Lava Dart really makes it feel good, but Emperor of Bones does want to find a creature to exile for the sake of pressure.
Well, Overlord of the Baelmerk is pretty good at helping on that front. We see Ketramos, got the Shrine, Witch Enchanter, all milled, and I think that's the backside of a Bogart Trawler.
Ooh, that's a nice hit off Emperor of Bones.
Oh yeah, you could go after that graveyard, really turn off this Delirium.
It also puts a bunch of cards in exile, notably, which means the Ketramos with lifelink.
Yeah, that would just be there.
Whew.
Do we have a black source is the question.
Oh,
well,
no.
you can pick up the Trawler land, right?
Right, you can see Christensen saying, oh, I really want that to be what I do, but...
It can't do both things. It can't be a swamp and a Trawler. Oh, there's Watery Grave, though.
Hey, that can be a swamp and an island.
Correct. Could also be mana for the Trawler.
It could be a boat. You know how bad we want one of those.
Yeah, kind of as predicted here, the Oracle of Bones is going to exile that Trawler, Ketramos trigger. Oracle of Bones is going to put that one on the battlefield.
All right, Emperor of Bones, now a 4/4.
Bogart Trawler, I would like to exile your graveyard. Duran cannot be thrilled about that.
Ketramos, luckily a 1 or more.
Sure, yeah, not just to draw 6 here is what you're getting at?
Well, and lose 6.
Sure.
It is not clear to me. I suspect Duran would be thrilled if that were to trigger 6 times here.
Sure, that could be the only shot at trying to win the game. Just some chip shots upstairs. But the really bad news is that this lifelinking Ketramos gets to attack now.
One of the nice things that the Prowess deck has going for it is it is great at saying, no, 13, I understand it's very cute that you think that's a safe life total, and I love that for you, but... And then you just chunk them for 20 out of nowhere.
Yeah, honestly, that's one of the reasons I'm not the biggest Dragon's Rage Channeler fan. It only attacks for 3 ever. when it's not attacking for 1.
Okay, well, sometimes a Dragon's Rage channeler has violent urges.
That's true. That's true. It can get large that way. Here is doing some chump blocking to try to claw back into Delirium for the other copy, but that Ketramos is going to chunk in for a big life swing.
And I do like the chump block for the reason you said. Getting a creature in yard is not nothing at this point, especially with Emperor of Bones pressuring Duran's graveyard.
Bad news is that Duran really needs something.
Yes.
Not nothing, not quite doing it. Don't do what Donnie Don't does. Back over to Duran.
What? Sorry, that wasn't very yes-and of me.
Here's a lightning bolt upstairs. Here's a surveil off the DRC.
Is this an upkeep bolt, perchance?
I believe this was after drawing. Another lightning bolt upstairs.
That's getting kind of close.
Yeah. Some mutagenic growth in the grip could be a thing. Tricky thing is, with that 4/4 hanging back, the DRC has to fly to make anything happen.
Right,
There wasn't mana, there wasn't spells, and Oscar Christensen is going to pick up game number 1 there.
That was so close.
Yeah, I think that in some ways it looked like a runaway, but like you said, I think it was closer than it appeared. And Duran pretty close to representing lethal on that final turn, but we are going to go to sideboarding. What do you like on Duran's side of thing for this matchup?
The things that stick out to me are just anything that interact with creatures. I think for the most part, Duran is really trying to make sure that they aren't disrupting the core of what their deck does too much, so I wouldn't expect really too much messing with what's going on, but Into the Floodmont, Unholy Heat both stick out to me as possible gets for Duran here. In general, I think cards like Mutagenic Growth get a bit worse post-sideboard whenever your opponent's planning to interact more. So I would even see this being Duran trying to get those cards out of their deck more than it is they are stoked to get Into the Floodmaw or Unholy Heat in.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension going on with Unholy Heat versus Psychic Frog and Graveyard Hate.
Yes.
It's really tough to actually convert it.
Right, exactly.
On the other side of things, for Oscar Christensen on this Esper Blink deck, what do you like here against Prowess?
I like High Noon a decent amount. This is something we've seen instant. You know what? What do you like here, right?
That's strong.
No, it's fine. What do you like? What do you like?
Strategically love the High Noon. As a human being, I'm disgusted.
Okay, well, luckily it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So I also like temporary lockdown in the matchup. And I think you could make a case for Wrath of the Skies, but I'm not particularly interested hanging my hat on it if I'm in Christensen's seat, especially when you're on the draw. I could see it coming back in whenever you're on the play, but I think you're at risk of dying before you can really convert it. There aren't other sources of energy in Christensen's deck to ever have the quote-unquote 2-mana mode.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bit of a liability on the draw, but I do think there's a strong justification for it when you're on the play, especially if you find out that Duran is better at leveraging any of the cards like Corey Steelcutter in the post-board games.
That's a really good shout in terms of the deck not having other energy sources to really leverage the Wrath of the Skies on time. And if you're a fan of good shouts, maybe you should check out the StarCityGames.com newsletter, where you can keep abreast of all kinds of information in the world on all things Magic. We have information on upcoming events, releases. Magic Final Fantasy is coming up. You can keep up with previews on that set there. This is just a free source of all kinds of information that you are obviously interested in if you're watching this broadcast.
Right, especially when it comes to the Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy release. There's a bunch of different kind of things in the product umbrella for it, keeping up to date on what's cool, what's awesome, especially if you're a Final Fantasy fan going, oh, the Commander decks are each committed to a different game. That's awesome. You're not necessarily going to get that just from looking at the box. So having someone giving you the down low on what is going on is super valuable in this space.
Much love to Nick Miller for keeping the newsletter going, for doing all our feature match picks, keeping up our metagame breakdown and deck list for events like this.
John Hall, also big contributor to the newsletter, just old friend of mine down from North Carolina where we first started playing together. I think he's over in Tennessee now, but any more specific, I might be doxing him. So
It's like players have presented for game number 2, both hoping to find a nice 7-card hand. Duran was on 6 in game number 1. Some mana woes kind of defined his side of the affair. And unfortunately, quickly to 6.
And I do think that the Izzet Prowess deck is one of the decks that can actually struggle a little bit more on mulliganing.
Yes, so it is really a critical mass deck, which is really the case for Prowess, specifically Corey Steelcutter, trying to cast 2 spells a turn. Also, this is a version of Prowess. There's been some iterations of Prowess in Modern that are really heavy on 1-mana spells, but this Izzet Prowess deck is longer on 2s than most historical Prowess decks in this format.
Right, something like Slickshot Show Off is a very strong card in its own right, but it does kind of ask you to have 3 or 4 other cards in your hand for it to really do a ton.
Right.
Though that being said, having the full set of expressive iterations, pretty nice in this matchup, especially now that Duran knows what's going on.
Yeah, we don't have to be afraid of that Atraxa kind of business anymore. Duran can now look at expressive iteration and see it as a way to actually climb ahead in terms of material. Christensen's going to 6, but Duran is going to 5.
Ooh.
And this Esper Blink deck is pretty long on ways to get card advantage as the game progresses, and a 5-card hand is pretty tough at closing a game quickly.
Yeah, it's really interesting where I think there are a lot of versions of hands that the Esper Blink deck has that can kind of undo a mulligan over time. But there are very few of them that don't ask you to have some amount of cardboard to give up. That's the hard part. Psychic Frog, for example, is something that you probably need to chuck a card or 2 against a red deck to actually have it start accruing cards and be at the part of the game where Psychic Frog isn't stuck on defense.
Right.
Solitude is kind of a similar situation. Ephemerate is a great value engine as long as you have an ETB creature that is already in play and that isn't going to get destroyed whenever you target it with the Ephemerate and so on. So I think there are a lot of ways for Christensen to make up this mulligan, but it is not a given that they're going to have the time to do so.
Sure. We'll see if Christensen's able to keep on 6. That's already making up a little bit on the mulligan, both with Duran being on 5 and Christensen on the draw.
Yes.
Looks like Christensen's happy with the 6. Duran probably at best resigned to the 5.
Yeah, a lot of times I think both players, one, because of what the Esper Blink deck is doing and having a bunch of cards like Solitude, sometimes you are just happy with lands and spells. Duran being on 5 will take any lands and spells.
Basic Mountain and Monastery Swiftspear entering the battlefield, tapped and attacking.
Look at that mountain.
Really nice mountain.
Take me to church.
Christensen's going to play Uncracking Marsh Flats for his land. Basic Plains as the find.
That's actually my default plains on Arena.
Really?
Just, yeah.
What set is that?
Eldraine?
First one or second one?
Throne of Eldraine.
Okay. Prismatic Ending is going to tag the Swiftspear.
Okay. That's nice. That is actually a really good pickup for Christensen here. We talked about it going into the match. A little bit lighter on ways to attack the battlefield. 2 Prismatic Endings and 4 Fatal Pushes, the main spot removal spells that Christensen has access to, and only 2 Ephemerates.
No second land for Duran, but a Dragon's Rage Channeler will replace the threat. This here is a Bleachbone Verge as land number 2 for Christensen. There's land number 2 for Duran, Arid Mesa, presumably finding a Steam Vents. Steam Vents and shocking for it, down to 17 is Duran.
Not that shocking.
And here's Corey Steelcutter. That's going to give us Surveil trigger. Another Dragon's Rage Channeler is going to be surveilled away. That makes sense. Gets a creature in the graveyard. Mutagenic Growth targeting DRC. This is going to make a Monk token.
Yes.
This is going to surveil. All right, this is a really good turn.
Yes.
The Mutagenic Growth is the 3rd card type towards Delirium.
Trigger, trigger, trigger.
Card stays on top, which is probably not a bad thing. Looks like Christensen might want to respond to some of this.
Yeah, you can tell at this point, Christensen has something, and is just figuring out, okay, well, how do I do it? It feels like this is Solitude Ephemerate, where you need the trigger to resolve, so you have multiple things to target with the Solitude.
Right.
Enters.
Yeah, you need the monk on the battlefield.
Right, right. Entirely possible it's Fatal Push, and Christensen is weighing, okay, well, if you left your card on top, do I want to go after the Prowess creature, or am I more worried about taking, say, 2 extra damage now?
Solitude, pitching Prismatic Ending. There goes the Dragon's Rage Channeler. All right, there's no Ephemerate.
Okay, it was just Solitude.
Monk token comes across for 2.
2 of them.
Christensen to 16, and here is Ophelia.
Exuberant little herder.
This could immediately get very scary, and it does, as here is Overlord or the Baelmerk.
On theme for Duskmorn.
Yes. It is impending, but those 5 counters are going to go away in pretty short order, I have to imagine. Ophelia will blink the Overlord. Connect for 2 points. Solitude also picked up off the Overlord. This is a nightmare for Duran.
Right, and this is the second Solitude.
Ugh.
Right. Okay, 4 cards flipped over from the Overlord. Hard to imagine it's not the other Solitude, just a white card to pitch at worst.
Yikes. This is
At
a high
worst.
floor. You need some stairs to get to the first floor of this strategy.
Well, there are 2 flights of stairs on either side of the Overlord, so good news. The bad news is the Colossopede.
All right, second Corey Steelcutter, and here's a 0-mana play. It looks like Mishra's Bobble, so 2 more monks are going to show up.
And this is one of the strengths of the Izzet Prowess deck that Duran has brought this weekend, is it can actually hang in a grindy game. It's not going as big. Things are not great for Duran, but the fact that there is still a game to play is a testament to this deck's strength.
Yeah, the Steelcutter is about the best card in the Prowess deck against something like Solitude. Got some work to do against this Overlord.
Ooh, is this everyone sideways?
If you want to get some damage in, makes sense. That's kind of what you have to do, right?
I mean, well, I started to say this smells like a mutagenic growth, and then I look at the 2 Solitudes.
Yeah. No, it's actually just pushing damage.
Maybe this is an attack for 6. Okay.
Yeah, you can't
Or
just
for 4, rather.
you can't just try to play forever against Ophelia blinking the Overlord every turn.
Absolutely.
Overlord also getting its own attack trigger.
Right, you also know you can't really block against these Solitudes.
Right. You can't block great against Ophelia because that can also just blink out your monk tokens.
Ooh.
And it does.
It can, and it will. Oh, Witch Enchanter.
That's not weak. It's a white card for these Solitudes right now. The mana development's not really there. But white card for Solitude makes it really tough for Duran to find a way out.
It doesn't really feel like the game is going to go that long or be about it, but it is able to destroy Corey Steelcutters if the game comes to that.
Yes.
There are notably Flicker Wisps in Christensen's deck.
That is a combo. Relic of Progenitus. Immediately cracked.
I like doing this at sorcery speed. It lets Christensen know if they draw a land, they can play it. We see this tap Godless Shrine-Enter. Or that could have been, well, I have a bunch of white cards. I can play my Witch Enchanter as a tapped land as well.
Right. Yeah, that extra information, and because those Solitudes are free spells, makes a lot of sense just to get that extra card. So we go back to Duran. He's going to need something really nice to try to close as quickly as possible here. And those 2 Solitudes that are... There's not really counterplay against that in this Prowess deck, is there?
No.
Well, that's tough.
No, it's consigned to memory.
Ugh. Okay. Lightning Bolt and Ophelia into the Floodmaw and the Overlord. That at least cleans up what Christensen's doing proactively.
That's not bad. All of a sudden, this Monk token is a 3/3. I have a feeling it is a 2/2 right now and is going to get exiled, but it will become a 3/3 given 2 spells have been cast.
And this is a lot of monks. This is starting to look possible for Duran.
Right, we were talking about things looking bad, but I don't know. It looks like the whole monastery has come out in support of Duran here.
Yeah, and I think you're also seeing why Christensen really valued not playing that Witch Enchanter as a land drop. I guess it's exiled to the Solitude, so we're not going to see that able to destroy a Steel Cutter. But certainly part of the consideration is life total's now tied at 8 with those monks coming across.
That is not much, though. Is Duran out of cards?
Duran did mulligan to 5.
Exactly. It hasn't had an expressive iteration or anything like that this game.
Meticulous Archive is going to surveil a Flooded Strand to the graveyard for Christensen, and here's Ketramos.
There certainly are enough cards in exile.
Yeah, that relic made sure of that, huh?
All right, knock on the deck.
The monks are attacking. Ketramos is going to jump in front.
Well, there has to be something.
It's mutagenic growth, okay. Grow that monk up to a 5/5. The other one is a 3/3. Ketramos, how destructible would you say the creature is?
I would say it is not out-destructible.
more indestructible?
It is indestructible.
Well, that's tough. I believe it's just a wash on combat damage then?
That is correct. Well,
Yikes.
actually, I believe Christensen netted a life there.
I think there's a trample for 1.
Oh, the trample. Thank you.
Right. It kind of seems like Duran really needed to wait a turn and try to have a second spell to pair with the growth, but
Sure.
it's tough no matter how you slice it. Another Relic of Progenitus. Card really combining with Ketramos.
Okay, so this time Christensen's just tapping it. 1 card going away for Duran. Christensen losing a life, drawing a card.
And with Duran so low, the Ketramos can really start to threaten Christensen actually ending the game, as if the giant lifelink blocker were not intimidating enough. Oh, wow. Paying 3 life for a land here. Oh, there's that Wrath of the Skies.
Yeah, okay.
Good night. Yeah, Duran going to pick up the lands too, as Oscar Christensen is going to win this game 2-0. Esper Blink advancing to 5-0-1, still technically undefeated.
Right, that was nice. And, you know, I do actually like how Wrath of the Skies played in that last game. So that